Our next speaker is Dan Pink. We're delighted to have Dan. He's the author of several compelling books on work and behavior, including two #1 New York Times bestsellers, Drive and To Sell Is Human. He's got a new book out. It's just out a few weeks. The title is The Power of Regret, How Looking Backward Moves Us Forward. We're always happy to get some time with Dan, and he's here with us live. Welcome, Dan Pink.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, Dan. It's a familiar sight at a People Analytics conference. You are the longest running, most frequent guest we've had, other than faculty. This is your sixth time on the program.
Well, I'm looking forward to the 7th visit because then you get a free bagel, right? Isn't that how it works? I have a little card.
Hey, you got to earn it though. We're not promised you the 7th yet.
Okay, I'll do what I can.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes today.
Yeah.
Listen, we're looking forward to hearing from you. We've titled the talk, If Only. You guys please enjoy Dan Pink.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, everybody. So I am going to do something. It's really great to be with you. This is, as Kate pointed out, this is the 6th time I've been here. So I know Angela read a blurb of a book that I wrote. It was a very generous blurb that I'm grateful for. Kate's blurb for me coming to this conference is, what Dan lacks in talent, he makes up for in availability. So thanks for having me back. I'm going to do a little thing right here. Stick with me. I'm going to live out my dream of becoming the anchor of Action 6 News. Here we go. So I want to talk about this question of what we regret, because I think it gives us some clues about how we show up at work. And I also think it gives us some interesting insights on the analytics side, how we find the truth, how we gain insights. And I also want to invite people in the chat to submit, if you're interested, your own regret. What's one big regret that you have? I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the science of regret, but I am going to suggest that this emotion, this stomach churning feeling that the future would be better and the present would be better and the future brighter, if only you hadn't chosen so poorly, decided so wrongly, or acted so stupidly in the past, is a transformative emotion. It reveals what we value. It instructs us on how to do better. And what I'm trying to do with this body of ideas is just try to eradicate the very wrong-headed philosophy of no regrets, this idea that we should never look backward, that we should always be positive. There is 50 years of evidence saying that regret is one of the most common emotions that human beings experience. And if we treat it right, it's also one of the most useful emotions that human beings experience. But I want to get at this question of what do people regret? Because as I said, I think it gives us some clues about how we show up as individuals. Now, this is a question that scholars have been looking at for a while. There were several, starting in the 1990s, several studies asking people the question of what they regretted to try to get some insight from that. There was a meta-analysis in 2005 that summarized these studies. And here's what it said. Let me pop this up on the screen. Wow, education is the biggest regret that people have, followed by career and romance, but education was the big winner. And this is a widely held belief for a long time, that when you inventory people's regrets, education was the thing they regretted most. However, one of the things they realized about this meta-analysis, a little after it was published, is that the underlying studies they looked at, there were something like 13 or 14 of them, were all on college campuses and mostly of college students. So if they had done all the research at a hospital, maybe health would have been the biggest regret that people had. So cut, fade out, we're going to try it again. In 2005, there was a more valid form of investigation, a random digit dialing poll conducted by Mike Morrison and Neil Rose, getting at this question, a much more accurate way of divining what people actually regret, rather than a meta-analysis of underlying studies that actually were not representative. And what they found is that it's not education that people regret the most. It is a lot of stuff. The top regret people had, romance, followed closely by family, followed closely by career and education and finance and parenting. In other words, people regret a lot of stuff. Kind of an unsatisfying conclusion. So last year, I decided to try to investigate this myself. So working with Qualtrics and the big data analytics company, I put together, I think, a pretty good survey. I decided I'm going to do the largest survey of American attitudes about regret ever conducted. So we put together a sample of 4,489 respondents, a very large sample of the US population. It was the sample was so large so we could make sure that every demographic group was represented, so we could weigh the sample to reflect the glorious diversity of the United States of America and allow us to make some credible claims about demographic differences on regret. So I said, I'm going to crack the code on this. I asked people what their biggest regret is, and then I had them slot them into categories because I would at long last figure out what people actually regret. And here's what I found out. People regret a lot of stuff. They regret things about their family. They regret things about their partners. They regret things about education and careers and finance. And it was very, very unsatisfying. I didn't find anything more insightful than anybody else had found. But I did something else that ended up being much more revelatory. And I think, again, it gives us some clues about how we know and the various ways that we can triangulate ways of knowing to get at something resembling the truth. Along with doing this very large public opinion poll, I think pretty rigorous and quite accurate poll, I did something else. I put up a website called the World Regret Survey. The World Regret Survey, you can find it at worldregretsurvey.com. And I asked people around the world, tell me about one of your big regrets, just like I did here in the chat, which I'll look at here in a moment. And you can go on there right now. We have an interactive map so you can see what people around the world regret. And what I found there was something quite interesting. First of all, I got a massive response. We now have a database of over 20,000 regrets, 20,000 regrets from people in 109 countries. It's extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. And I read through the first 15,000 of them, and I discovered something about what people regret. And it comes, and the way of knowing this comes from actually reading people's language, listening to their words, not confining ourselves to existing categories. And what I found is that around the world, people had the same 4 regrets. Now, not every single regret fit into these 4 categories, but with remarkable regularity, these regrets fell into 4 core categories, and they had nothing to do or little to do with the domains of people's lives. I want to run through these categories here and then make one final comment about them. The first category is what I call foundation regrets. Foundation regrets. Here is an example of a foundation regret. This is a 43-year-old man in Tennessee. He says, I regret not saving money diligently ever since I started working. It's nearly crushing every day to think about how hard I've worked for the last 25 years or so, but financially, I have nothing to show for it. Foundation regrets are people who make small decisions early in their life that accumulate to bad consequences later. And it doesn't matter the domain. It can be about finance. I have huge numbers of people who spend too much and save too little. Not a single person of the 20,000 regretted saving too much money. A lot of regrets, though, about not doing that. A lot of regrets about spending, about smoking, especially outside of the United States, about other health decisions, not working hard enough in school, small decisions that create wobbliness later in life. And foundation regrets sound like this. If only I'd done the work. If only I'd done the work. Next category. These are what I call boldness regrets. Boldness regrets. Let me give you an example. This is a surprisingly common example. This is a 37-year-old man in Ireland says, I met the most amazing woman in college and never found the courage to ask her out. These boldness regrets, again, span the domains. The domains don't give us the insights. What's underneath, one layer beneath the surface is what gives us the insights. So we have people who regret not asking people out on dates. We have a surprising number of American college graduates who regret not studying abroad. We have people who regret not speaking up. We have people who regret not starting a business. Again, all of those are not starting a business is a career regret. Not studying abroad is an education regret. Not asking somebody out on a date is a romance regret. But it's the same regret, in my view. It's the regret where you're at a juncture, you can take the chance or you can play it safe. And when people don't take the chance, often, not always, but often, they regret it. Some other examples of this. I wish I'd taken more career risks. I played it too safe. Classic. So many regrets in the database like this. A 35-year-old woman in California. So boldness regrets are if only I'd taken the chance. Third category, moral regrets. Another good one. Let's take a look. This guy says, 37-year-old man in Canada says, I regret bullying a few different kids in my grade growing up. When I think back on it, I cringe, and I can't help but wish for a chance to go back and change it. Moral regrets. You're at a juncture. You can do the right thing. You can do the wrong thing. You do the wrong thing. Not everyone, but most. They regret it. They regret it. It doesn't matter whether it's in school. We have a huge numbers of regrets about bullying, huge numbers of regrets about marital infidelity, and an array of other kinds of moral transgressions. So moral regrets are, if only I'd done the right thing. The final category of regrets are connection regrets. Connection regrets. Here's an example. Here is a 47-year-old woman in California who says, I deeply regret not reaching out to a childhood friend while she was fighting cancer. When I finally called her home, I learned she had passed away earlier that morning. Connection regrets are about relationships, and not only romantic relationships. In fact, mostly not romantic relationships. It's relationships of every sort. And what happens is these relationships come apart, usually slowly and undramatically. Somebody wants to reach out. They say, oh, it's going to be awkward to reach out, and the other side's not going to care. So they don't do it, and the drift continues. And the problem is they're wrong on both of those counts. It's very rarely awkward when they actually do reach out, and the other side almost always cares. So it's a colossal form of pluralistic ignorance of people not thinking that other people want to hear from them. Here's another example of a connection regret. This guy in the workplace, and I think this tells us a lot about what's going to happen in the future and sort of the configuration of the workplace. This guy says, I wish I had tried harder to foster deeper relationships with my work colleagues. I've worked at the same place for over 30 years, but I'm not sure I would really call any of the people I've worked with a close friend. I find that quite sad. So connection regrets are this. If only I'd reached out. If only I'd reached out. Now, let's do a quick, I think these things are interesting in and of themselves. All right, we've got these 4 regrets, but I think there's something even more interesting about these regrets that I didn't come to until very late in the research game. And I didn't come to unless I came to as a consequence of this qualitative research. That is, what allowed me to, I think, find something as resembling the truth about this emotion of regret was coming at it multiple ways, looking at the existing science, doing my own piece of quantitative research, but also doing my own piece of qualitative research. And when you bring them together, you get insights. And this qualitative piece was essential because what I discovered is that these 4 core regrets operate as something of a photographic negative of the good life. A photographic negative of the good life. That is, when people tell you what they regret the most, they're also telling you what they value the most. So these 4 regrets are a photographic negative of a good life. And I had to put this image of a photographic negative here because people under 25 do not know what I'm talking about. I realized when I said photographic negative. If your experience of photography is only digital, you don't know what this is, but ask your mom and dad. So here's what we know. We have these 4 core regrets. Each of them, I think, reveals something fundamental about what human beings need. So let's pop up this big table here. Foundation regrets, if only I'd done the work. That's about stability, a good life, all right? If these regrets are a photographic negative of a good life, we know that a good life has some stability. It's not precarious. It's not wobbly. A good life has to have some predictability and some stability and some solidity to it. Second, boldness regrets, if only I'd taken the chance. I think that's about growth. People recognize that they're mortal. They're not going to be here forever. So they want to do something. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to experience the psychological richness of life. Moral regrets, if only I'd done the right thing. It's about goodness. It's about goodness. It's about doing the right thing. I'm convinced that most of us are moral and most of us want to be moral. And when I say most, I mean overwhelming numbers of people. want to be moral, are moral, and want to be moral. And finally, connection regrets, which I think are about love. And not only romantic love. I think at some level in our culture, we're over-indexed on romantic love. I mean, I'm all for romantic love, but there's other kinds of love. The love we have for our companionate love, the love we have for our friends, for our colleagues, for our former colleagues. And that's a significant part of life. And so what's interesting about this emotion of regret, if we excavate it properly, it tells us what makes life worth living. What do we want out of life? What we want is some stability. We want a chance to learn and grow and not waste our vanishingly short time on this planet. We want to do good and be good, and we want love. And so as we contemplate the future of work, if this is what people want out of their lives, then why would they not want it out of the half of their waking hours of their lives that they're at work? And so a challenge to organizations, I think, going forward is, can they provide these things to people on the job? Can the working part of people's lives be as rich and meaningful in offering these things as what we know people are seeking in the totality of their lives? That's the challenge. And I think that this is the moment when organizations, individuals, and leaders need to step up and deliver that. And so in this peculiar way, this negative emotion of regret offers us a powerful and positive path forward. Thanks for having me back, People Analytics.